Most people think Larry Bird was just another talented basketball player who made it big. But the real story is far more incredible than anyone imagined. This is the shocking truth about how a man who was literally collecting garbage in small-town Indiana became one of the most feared competitors in NBA history, all while hiding injuries that would have ended most careers before they started. Picture this. It's 1975, and 19-year-old Larry Bird is driving a garbage truck through the streets of French Lick, Indiana, population 2,000. He's picking up trash, fixing park benches, and loving every minute of it. Because for the first time in his life, he feels like he's actually accomplishing something meaningful. What nobody knew was that this same guy throwing garbage bags into a truck would soon be throwing three-pointers over the heads of NBA superstars and talking trash like nobody's business. Larry's story starts in the worst possible way. Born into crushing poverty in West Baden, Indiana, he was the fourth of 6 kids crammed into a tiny house with parents who could barely keep the lights on. His father, Joe, was a construction worker who battled severe alcoholism, and when winter came, their ancient furnace would break down, leaving the entire family shivering in the cold. Larry often got shipped off to his grandmother's house in French Lick, just so there would be one less mouth to feed. But poverty wasn't even the worst part of Larry's childhood. What shaped him into the relentless competitor he became was watching his father struggle through unimaginable pain just to provide for his family. Larry was 13 when he witnessed something that would define his entire approach to basketball and life. His dad came home from work with an ankle so black and blue it looked like it had been destroyed, and he needed Larry and his brother just to get his boot off because the pain was excruciating. The next morning, Larry watched his father force that same boot back onto his mangled foot and limp off to work because he knew his family needed the money. That image burned itself into Larry's brain and explains why he later played through injuries that would have hospitalized most people. When you've seen your dad go to work on what might have been a broken ankle just to put food on the table, complaining about basketball injuries becomes impossible. Everything fell apart when Larry was just 18 years old. His father's demons finally caught up with him, and Joe Bird made the devastating decision to end his own life, believing his family would be better off with his life insurance money than with him around. Larry was absolutely destroyed, feeling both heartbroken and betrayed by his dad's final act. But in typical Larry fashion, he channeled that pain into respect for his father's sacrifice and used it as motivation to never give up on anything. That's when Larry's life took its strangest turn. He'd already quit Indiana University after just 4 weeks because he felt overwhelmed and out of place. And now, with his father gone, he had no idea what to do with himself.
So he did what seemed natural for a kid from French Lick. He got a job with the city's sanitation department. And for the first time in years, he was genuinely happy. Larry loved being outdoors, working with his hands, and feeling like he was making his community better by cleaning up the streets and maintaining the parks. But his family life was spiraling out of control. Larry got married to his high school girlfriend, but the marriage was a disaster from day one. They divorced quickly, and just when he thought he was free, she told him she was pregnant and refused to let him have anything to do with the baby. So at 19, Larry had lost his father, survived a brutal divorce, and was banned from seeing his own child. Most people would have been completely broken by this series of devastating events. That's when Bill Hodges changed everything. The assistant coach at Indiana State University had heard rumors about this incredible basketball player who was wasting his talent picking up garbage in French Lick. Hodges made it his mission to convince Larry to give college basketball another shot, but Larry kept making excuses about why he couldn't leave his job and his hometown. Finally, Hodges got fed up with Larry's resistance and delivered one of the most brutal reality checks in sports history. Larry kept talking about some friend of his who was an amazing basketball player, but nobody would ever know about him because he never went to college. Hodges looked him straight in the eye and said, "Yeah, Larry, they're going to say that about you someday." Then he got up and walked out without saying another word. 2 days later, Larry called and said he was ready to play basketball again. That conversation literally saved his career and changed NBA history forever. What happened next was pure basketball magic. Larry showed up at Indiana State at 6'9", and immediately proved he was a basketball genius. He averaged 33 points, 13 rebounds, and 4 assists in his first season. But the crazy part is that he was still holding back. Larry had this incredible ability to see the game 3 moves ahead of everyone else, and his passing was so creative
that teammates would often be caught off guard by his no-look dishes and behind-the-back feeds. But Larry's real secret weapon wasn't his shooting or his passing. It was his mouth. From day one, he talked more trash than anyone in basketball history, and he backed up every single word. Before games, he'd tell opposing players exactly what he was going to do to them, and then he'd do it. He once walked into the locker room before the three-point shooting contest and asked the other participants, "Which one of you is coming in second?" Then he won the contest without even taking off his warm-up jacket. The trash talk wasn't just for show. It was psychological warfare designed to get inside his opponents' heads and destroy their confidence. Larry would tell defenders exactly where he was going to shoot from, how many dribbles he was going to take, and whether the shot was going in off the glass or nothing but net. Then he'd do exactly what he said he would do while staring them down with that cold, emotionless expression that became his trademark. What makes Larry's story even more incredible is that he played his entire career with a secret that would shock most fans. During his final season at Indiana State, Larry severely dislocated his right index finger. But instead of getting proper medical treatment, he just popped it back into place and kept playing. That finger never healed properly, and Larry had to completely adjust his shooting form to compensate for the permanent damage. He swears he was actually a better shooter in college than in the NBA because of that injury. When Larry joined the Boston Celtics in 1979, he immediately transformed one of the worst teams in basketball into championship contenders. The Celtics went from 29 wins to 61 wins in Larry's rookie season, and he won Rookie of the Year over Magic Johnson. But what fans didn't realize was that Larry was already dealing with chronic pain that would only get worse as his career progressed. The beginning of the end came during the 1985 offseason when Larry made a decision that perfectly captured his blue-collar mentality. His mother needed a new driveway, and instead of hiring contractors like any other millionaire athlete would do, Larry decided to build it himself. He spent an entire day shoveling gravel and concrete, and by the end of the day, he had seriously damaged his back. The injury caused his spine to become misaligned, and from that point forward, Larry had to have his back adjusted before every single game just to be able to walk onto the court. The back injury was so severe that Larry often had to lie flat on the floor for hours between games and practices. He'd spend up to 4 hours a day stretching and trying to manage the pain, but he refused to let it stop him from playing. During games, he'd sometimes have to lie down on the bench during timeouts because the pain was so intense he couldn't sit upright. But just like his father had taught him years earlier, Larry kept showing up to work no matter how much it hurt. Larry's final years in the NBA were a masterclass in playing through pain that most people can't even imagine. He couldn't walk normally. He couldn't sleep without constant discomfort, and every movement sent shooting pain through his entire body. But he still averaged over 20 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists during his final 3 seasons, proving that mental toughness could overcome almost any physical limitation. The trash talking continued right until the end, and some of Larry's most legendary moments came during his final seasons when he was barely able to walk. He'd tell opponents exactly what he was going to do, then somehow find a way to do it despite being in constant agony. The combination of his basketball IQ, his competitive fire, and his complete refusal to show weakness made him one of the most feared players in NBA history. But here's the most shocking part of Larry Bird's story. Away from the basketball court, he was the complete opposite of the arrogant trash talker that opponents knew. Larry remained humble to his core, never forgot where he came from, and always treated people with respect. When the Celtics won the championship in 1984, Larry approached Red Auerbach and asked if he could buy a championship ring for Walter, an old equipment manager who had died. No other player had ever thought to do something like that. Larry also had opportunities to pad his stats that he simply refused to take. In 1985, he was 1 steal away from recording a quadruple-double, something only one player in NBA history had ever achieved. But when his coach asked if he wanted to stay in the game to get that steal, Larry said no, because they were already winning by 25 points and he'd done enough damage already. That kind of class and sportsmanship separated him from every other superstar. Even with all his success and wealth, Larry never changed who he was at heart. He drove regular cars, wore simple clothes, and always said he felt more comfortable in French Lick than anywhere else in the world. He couldn't understand why anyone would spend $60,000 on a Mercedes when the house he grew up in was only worth $10,000. That small-town humility, combined with his ruthless competitiveness on the court, created a persona that was both intimidating and incredibly respected. Today, Larry Bird's legacy goes far beyond his 3 championships, 3 MVP awards, and countless records. He proved that you don't need to be the fastest or the strongest to dominate at the highest level. You just need to be smarter, tougher, and more willing to sacrifice than everyone else. His story shows that sometimes the greatest champions come from the most unlikely places and overcome the most devastating circumstances. The garbage man from French Lick became one of the greatest players in NBA history, not despite his humble origins, but because of them. Every bag of trash he collected, every park bench he fixed, and every moment of poverty he endured shaped him into the relentless competitor who refused to let anything stop him from achieving greatness. That's the real Larry Bird story, and it's more inspiring than any Hollywood movie could ever be.